Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I'll Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And we are back with a new episode of Feminists Around the World. Before we start, let's go ahead and put this content warning and trigger warning about loss in pregnancy, stillbirth, and anti-reproductive health laws. There's a lot going on here in the U.S. If you didn't know, we have elections and obviously a continued fight for equal rights, including women's rights for reproductive health. And the aftermath of the repeal of Roe v. Wade has been pretty intense, with women being jailed and charged for neglect or even murder, and some who've had to risk their health and lives because of the restrictions of the repeal, and those who are taking advantage of how to use it in order to strip away pregnant people's rights. Yes, that's a very big topic right now. I know most of you know. And with that, we know there are testimonies all around the world who will understand the repercussions of all of this. So today we are talking about a specific incident in the advocacy work of activist Teodora del Carmen Vasquez. Vasquez's life changed drastically when her pregnancy became an emergency situation. So after being in pain for several days, she tried to ask for help from her management while she was working. And at the time, she was working at a school in the cafeteria, and she was around 9 months pregnant with her second child. After her supervisors refused to help her or get help for her, Vasquez was found passed out in the bathroom with her stillborn. And instead of getting help after the incident, Vasquez was arrested and charged with aggravated homicide.
Here's her own words about that traumatic day from globalcitizen.org. On Friday, July 13th, 2007, I was living a desired and full-term pregnancy. It was a Friday the 13th that I will remember forever. I believed that what I lived through was part of my destiny. I was 9 months pregnant and getting ready for my baby to be born. I was working in a school coffee shop. It was the last day of the week, and I was getting ready to deliver my baby on Saturday. However, that Friday around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I began to feel pain, a very strong labor pain. Since it was Friday, my colleagues had left early, so I was alone. The pain started, and I had to stay there because it was a 4-hour drive from San Salvador to my house. I grabbed the phone and started making emergency calls. I called 911 because in my agony, I only remembered that number and asked for an ambulance. I explained that I was pregnant, that I was expecting my baby, and I was in labor, that I couldn't stand the pain, that I needed the doctors to come urgently. They didn't come. They never came. And since they never came, my baby had to be born where I was. I had horrible bleeding, and I fainted.
Vasquez lived in El Salvador, and at the time and even today, they have a complete abortion ban without any exceptions. With this abortion ban, a pregnant person can be imprisoned for up to 8 years for many cases that they classify as an abortion, whether it's stillborn or miscarriage of fetuses. But for Vasquez, she was charged and sentenced with a minimum of 30 years in prison. Here's some more information about the abortion laws in El Salvador from Progressive International. El Salvador has some of the world's harshest anti-abortion laws. Not only is abortion prohibited in all circumstances, including in cases of rape, incest, or when the life of the pregnant person is at risk, it is also severely punished with up to 8 years in prison. But women who suffer an obstetric complication, such as miscarriages or stillbirth, are punished even more harshly. They can be prosecuted for murder or aggravated murder and face up to 50 years inside. Hundreds of women, most of them poor, have been sentenced to long prison terms. And that's a big conversation about how most of the women who are in prison are probably classified as poor or low income social status. So there's definitely a level here. And a bit more from foreignpolicy.com. 25 years ago this April, and this was written in 2023, El Salvador passed a total ban on abortions, no exceptions for rape, incest, or the health or life of the mother, transforming society in this Central American nation. Now the ban might finally be overturned. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has begun hearing Beatrice versus El Salvador, investigating the case of a woman who was seriously ill from lupus, arthritis, and renal failure, but denied an abortion even though the fetus would not survive outside of the uterus. The woman died not long after. With this court case, the court will rule for the first time on whether the absolute prohibition of abortion rights violates a woman's right to life and health. Spoiler alert, they did not. They did not pass this, if I remember correctly. It is still intact.
And the article continues, quote, with over 50 women incarcerated since the ban was passed, El Salvador is one of the most widely documented examples of a country imprisoning women for abortion. The Fuller Project and Foreign Policy have reviewed court documents or pardon requests related to 25 cases from 1999 to 2018 of pregnant women accused of aggravated homicide, attempted aggravated homicide, and abortion. They reveal how the country's abortion ban made neighbors, doctors, police, and judges, the very people meant to help these women, turn against them instead. The system doesn't seek the truth, it seeks to blame these women, Cortez said.
Right. And Abigail Cortez is actually one of the women with the Citizens Group for the Decriminalization of Abortion in El Salvador. So she's been working quite hard in overturning these laws. But I think that last statement was really, really important to have that, yes, they don't care. They don't care to seek the truth. And we know what's happening in the U.S. It's kind of the similar level where they use misinformation and disinformation to try to say that people are killing babies because they're fetuses. Anyway, whatever. Moving on. So, though the records showed that Vasquez's stillborn had not taken a breath, the courts refused to hear her out. And even in 2017, 10 years after her being in prison, they wouldn't. In an article written in Univision.com in 2017, they report, a court in El Salvador decided late Wednesday to uphold a 30-year prison sentence for Teodora del Carmen Vasquez, who gave birth to a stillborn baby in 2007. Prosecutors accused her of killing her newborn and charged her with homicide. After the verdict was announced, the room fell silent except for the cries of Vasquez's mother. Vasquez turned to her lawyers in shock and frustration. Teodora was shocked, says her lawyer, Katie Racinos. She said, I'm innocent and I need to keep going.
The article goes on. Prosecutors did not elaborate on their reasoning Wednesday, only stating that evidence was not sufficient to clear Vasquez of charges. The judges who decided to uphold the sentence were the same judges who sentenced her 10 years ago.
Right. And she wasn't the only one to go through similar ordeals. Vasquez was one of 17 who were all sentenced to aggravated homicide from 1999 to 2011. The women were actually referred to as Los 17. I know that's going to be in Spanish, and I can't remember the 17 in Spanish. Apologies, y'all. But yes, so they are referred to as that.
And it was in prison that Vasquez realized she needed to do something to not only advocate for herself, but others in situations similar to her. Here's some more from her article in Global Citizen. Quote, while I was in prison, I started working with an organization called Tiempos Nuevos Teatro. I started doing theater, and then they asked me if I wanted to work with them because I liked reading books and empowering women. I really started my activism from the inside. Then I met women prisoners accused of a crime similar to mine. I realized that the only way out is to take strength from ourselves to be united. At the beginning, the discrimination that accompanied us was very strong, and many times we did not have access to anything. Even if we went to serve our food at lunchtime in the prison, other women who were there would take it away from us because they said that we deserved to die slowly. We were 24 women in there who were in prison for a situation just like mine, but we were very strong, united, in a very good circle. We had decided to fight together. Despite so much pain and so much injustice, I moved forward. The truth is that when I think about everything we have been through together and how we are now, what we have achieved is very nice. The situation forces you to bring out the lioness in you.
In 2018, she was finally able to be released with the help of outside campaigns and organizations around the world. It took almost 11 years, but she was finally freed. However, she was freed with her sentence commuted and not overturned. She was the 16th woman to be released after the different organizations worked the cases of these different women. So here's what she had to say in the Global Citizen about her release. I regained my freedom on February 15th, 2018. After being sentenced to 30 years in prison, I was released after 10 years and 7 months. I really managed to get out thanks to the campaigning efforts of different organizations and because of my good behavior. I adapted to the space and the place in order to survive. I had to learn to live with all the bad things around me, even though I was not guilty of what they were accusing me of. I always knew that even though I was inside the jail was not inside me. That is something that separated me from jail. I was deprived of my freedom, but at the same time, I was mentally building a life out here, a life that is now becoming a reality.
However, it wasn't so easy to readjust, and she continues, "It is difficult to be released because it is difficult to reintegrate into society, to deal with the social stigma, the lack of integration, the lack of opportunities. My first day of freedom was hard, sad, difficult. I've been deprived of my freedom, but I had a group of women I was working with. I wanted to get out, but I was split in two because I was very sad to leave the rest of the women in there. I had to level everything. I had to think about the women inside and think about my family. The day I was free again, I was very happy because I saw my son again, my parents, my brothers, and my nephews and nieces. We are a very big family. I have 11 siblings, and they were all there, but I was also afraid for the future, and I didn't know where to start."
However, again, this didn't stop her. She would go on to work with the Tiempos Nuevos Teatro and also go on to study and go to the university. And it was then she started her own project, Mujeres Libres de El Salvador. So here's some information from the Progressive International on the organization. On regaining their freedom, she and Alvarado founded the nonprofit organization Mujeres Libres El Salvador. The group provides training and support for women who, like them, have been deprived of their liberty to enable them to reintegrate into society. The training is focused on personal growth and covers legal issues, human rights, gender and sex and reproductive health. For Vasquez, activism is her daily work. When she or her colleagues hear via social media or word of mouth that a woman has been in prison for an obstetric emergency, they get to work. They meet her in prison and work with the lawyers who offer free legal support and representation.
And she goes on to explain the project with Global Citizen, quote, "Our project has several pillars. The first component is health, because when we leave prison, health is a priority since we do not receive any follow-up care there. And with all the difficulties we experience, we come out sick. The second is psychological support. The third is legal support to follow up the women who are still in open process. The fourth is scholarship so that they can study. The fifth is employment. And the sixth is housing. We have built these 6 pillars as a result of every need that the women have expressed throughout the project. Step by step, we have been covering all these needs. The important thing has been to see how the women are becoming empowered. They are talking about their rights. They are learning things. Some are already studying at university. Some have graduated as nurses. We have women who graduate in tourism, law, teachers, communicators. It has taken a lot of work, but each of my colleagues has put a lot of effort and determination into believing in the projects and saying, yes, you have to be encouraged. It is not the same to have someone speak for you as it is for you to say directly how you feel."
And she and her crew continue to fight for their rights and vindication. She talks about her goals and her dreams, and she writes in The Global Citizen, "I want my story to be known. There is a way to change the world if you speak out. I want women to know that after prison, there is also hope. There is no way to turn back time, but coming together has given us opportunities and empowered us. We women have to open doors, open roads for ourselves to pass through. Although I'm free, I still feel I'm in the process of reintegration because there are things that are still difficult. I have a university degree. I have won different awards for all my work and for my perseverance and struggles. The opportunities to have a legally constituted organization gives me a lot of hope because that opens doors for us. But there's still a lot to do, and one of my biggest goals is to help these women find ways to survive and be independent. The independence of each woman is what interests me. To achieve that, I need to make sure that every woman receives moral and psychological support within the spaces of Mujeres Libres. That is one of my dreams and objectives. I will continue working to achieve it." And that's, exactly what she's been doing. I think it's interesting because there's also an article from many human rights lawyers as well as activists from El Salvador trying to tell the U.S. this is what's going to happen, giving us a cautionary tale about what is happening and the slippery slope that happens through this. As in fact, there was in one article, and I'm not going to give you complete quotes and not necessarily talk about it because it's not about us necessarily, but where one El Salvadorian lawyer says that it is known that some of the authorities in El Salvador actually talk to the U.S. authorities and talk about how to make these changes happen. So just things to think about, but also to remember people like Teodora, who has done the work, even though she has gone through so much, and who continues to do the work to help others through these paths.
Yes, and finding that camaraderie with other women and other people who have gone through similar things. Because yes, this is something we're going to be talking about a lot, I feel, in the future. But Yes, as always, if you have any suggestions for this segment or anything at all, please contact us. You can email us at stephaniemomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff One Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks, as always, to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff One Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.